Tonight on The Buzz, we look at audio mixing, hardware, and production planning. We start with Oscar-nominated sound designer Julian Slater. He has more than 75 features to his credit. Tonight, we talk about how he creates the soundscape for a film, including his recent sound design and mixing. On Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Next, we move to an Oscar-winning film, The Shape of Water, and talk with its two re-recording mixers, Cooke and Brad Zoern. They've worked as an audio team for more than 10 years, and tonight they talk about how they created the final audio mix for this Oscar-winning film. Next, Jeff Berryman claims that the amount of information a media professional needs to know about how to use networks is more than they should need to know. Jeff is a senior scientist for Bosch Communications and chair of several AES standards committees. Tonight, he explains what we need to know to become intelligent users of network equipment. Next, we turn from audio to hardware. MediaWorkstations.net is a company that customizes computer hardware to meet the specific high-performance needs of media professionals. Tonight, we talk with President and founder Christopher Johnson about how they create tailor-made hardware for media pros. Next, production planning can be a headache filled with ever-present deadlines, mountains of paperwork, and thousands of details to track. Tonight, we talk with Robert Kiraz, co-founder and CEO of StudioBinder, a cloud-based solution to help put everything in one place and reduce your stress. All this, plus James DeRuvo with our weekly DoddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative,
one show serves a worldwide network of media professionals,
current,
uniting industry experts,
production,
filmmakers,
post-production,
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Tonight, we have a variety of things to talk about, but we're going to start with audio, which seems appropriate for an audio podcast. Our first two interviews revolve around Oscar-nominated films and audio mixers. As you listen to the interviews with Justin Slater, Cooke, and Brad Zoern, listen to the size and diversity of the teams they work with to bring the sound of our movies to life. Many times, as I sit in a dark editing room working on a project, I wonder what it would be like to be part of a bigger team working on a larger project. Tonight's interviews provide an interesting perspective on what's possible and how it works. Then we turn our attention to improving our network skills, creating custom high-performance hardware for visual effects, and improving our production planning. We have some fascinating guests tonight, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Before we start, though, I want to invite you to subscribe to our free weekly show newsletter at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Every issue, every week, provides quick links to the different segments on the show, plus articles of interest to filmmakers. And best of all, every issue is free and comes out on Saturday morning. And now it's time for our DoddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Happy Thursday, Larry.
And a very happy Thursday to you, and I will let you know that it's less than 4 weeks to NAB.
Less than a month.
So what do we got for news today?
Well, remember that story that we talked about last week? It was actually more of a rumor that Canon might be shifting focus to mirrorless camera technologies. Mm-hmm. Granted, they've been making mirrorless cameras for a while, but it's always been as an also-ran. But now we're starting to hear that they're going to start focusing on mirrorless. And it kind of makes sense because if you look at the rental numbers for 2017, Sony mirrorless cameras and Panasonic and the Panasonic GH5 were at the top of the list. They're very popular with runners and gunners who want to rent a camera for the weekend and shoot. We've got a couple of interviews this week, one from Canon CEO Fujio Mitsuri and from Sony camera manager Kenji Tanaka that seem to add weight to this notion that Canon is actually shifting towards mirrorless, and Nikon may be coming along with them. And it comes from Tanaka saying that at Camera Plus this week that he expects both Canon and Nikon to have full-frame mirrorless cameras for sale within a year. Canon CEO Miterari basically said that Canon plans to go on the offensive in the mirrorless camera realm. And so this is going to make that category very interesting if Canon takes mirrorless and runs with it seriously.
All right, looks like there's more mirrorless cameras in our future. What's our second story?
It's Canon Camera Day here at the Buzz. The Canon 5D Mark IV has developed a minor high frame rate issue. It's not a deal breaker if you don't use the Canon mobile app. If you use the Canon mobile app on the Android side, there's no confirmation of it for iOS yet, but when Canon's Android remote app triggers high frame rate in the 5D Mark IV, it could cause the camera to hang up and crash, and the only way to clear it is to remove the battery, count to 10 seconds, and then pop it back in.
So what's the specific issue?
There's a bit of code that is causing the handshake between the Android app and the camera itself to hang up, and that's causing the camera to crash. More often than not, this is bad code that's in the app, not in the camera itself. Canon is aware of the problem. They responded immediately to users who have complained about the issue, and they should have a firmware fix out within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But Larry, it's a salient reminder that our cameras are more computers than imaging devices these days, and sometimes they can simply crash when they get a command they don't understand.
Well, we've heard about Nikon and Sony and Canon. Do you have any stories that don't involve cameras this week?
I have a software story. Adobe announced this week that for the first time in 5 years, they're raising the price of Creative Cloud. Starting April 16th, there's going to be a modest 6% price increase for Creative Cloud in both piecemeal and all-you-can-eat subscriptions, but it's not that big a deal. The increase amounts to between $1 and $2 a month, and if you're a student user or you are using the Adobe Photography plan, those plans are going to remain as is, unaffected, and you'll be paying the same amount.
Is this Adobe's first price increase?
Very first price increase. And when you consider how dramatically they've expanded the entire Creative Cloud catalog, they've added applications like Adobe Character Animator, Adobe Spark, Adobe Stock, and others. No increase in 5 years, that's really impressive. And the increase doesn't even amount to a cost of a latte at Starbucks, so I don't even think it's a big deal. But the good news is if you just signed up or renewed your subscription, that increase won't appear until your renewal date. So that could be up to a year.
News from Adobe. What other stories are you following this week?
Well, other stories we're following include Rycote has a great microphone blimp kit that can be modified to be even smaller. I reviewed the Robo R2 3D printer, and boy, that was an odyssey. And my question to you this week, Larry, is our cinema cameras getting too complicated?
Well, the answer is yes and no. If it has the controls that you need, no. And if it has more controls than you need, yes. And where can we go on the web to read all these stories?
All these stories and more can be found at DoddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of DoddleNEWS. And James, as always, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Starting Monday, April 9, join the digital production buzz at the 2018 NAB show in Las Vegas, Nevada. Larry Jordan and the Buzz team are taking their microphones on the road to cover the latest news and announcements from the largest media show in the world. Every hour of every day, the Buzz is live on the trade show floor. More than 100 interviews, creating 27 new shows in 4 days. The Buzz has webcast directly from NAB for 10 years, and our coverage is legendary, heard in more than 195 countries around the world. If you're attending the show, visit us at booth SL10-527 and say hello. If you can't attend, visit nabshowbuzz.com for a schedule of shows and guests. That's nabshowbuzz.com and join the Buzz at NAB.
Julian Slater has created sound for more than 75 feature films and television shows over a 25-year career. These include, most recently, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle and Baby Driver. He was nominated this year for 2 Academy Awards for Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Editing, and is a 2-time Emmy Award nominee. Hello, Julian. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
75 features is a ton of work. What first got you interested in sound mixing?
You know what? That's the first time anyone has ever relayed that kind of information to me, and I'm slightly shocked at hearing that. Yeah, I guess it's been quite a lot of work over the course of the last 25 years.
So what got you started? What is it that hooked your interest in audio?
A number of things, and looking back on them now, I can probably identify them. I know it was the cassette Walkman, whereby I spent a ton of my time listening to music and getting interested in any kind of music. And I do remember when I was about 9 or 10 seeing a documentary with Ben Burt, the sound designer of Star Wars, and how he came up with the sounds of the laser blasters and Chewbacca and the TIE fighters. And even though I didn't know it at the time, I think that had a big effect, kind of like a light bulb moment. And then latterly, when I was about 12, I do remember seeing the music video for The Police, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. And they're on this big mixing desk and they're just pushing these faders up and down. And I distinctly remember thinking, wow, that looks really cool. I want to do that. Fast forward 25 years, that's kind of what I'm doing.
Well, you've worked in a variety of different audio roles. Which do you enjoy the most?
It can depend on the production. I wear 3 hats. I'm a sound designer, which means I can sit there for weeks and weeks coming up with some weird and wonderful noises that may or may not get used. I'm a supervising sound editor, which means I run a team of other sound editors. And with that, I have 2 roles. One is I have a duty to the producer to bring the project in on budget. And then at the very least, it's to give the director what he or she is thinking for their sound for their movie. And hopefully it's to kind of push them to go further than that and to help them, get stuff that they probably didn't even think could be possible.
When have you had a producer say, don't worry about the budget, spend whatever you need? And when have you ever had a director say, I don't care about my creative vision, I want to save money?
Exactly. I do remember on Shaun of the Dead, which was kind of it was the first time I'd worked, and I had my own post facility at that time. And we put in a budget and a quote, and it's the only time I've ever been told I was too cheap. Because Universal, I was an unknown entity. I hadn't really done big features at that point. And Universal were worried it was so cheap that it meant that I didn't really know what I was doing, which wasn't the case at all. And that's the only time subsequent in my career that I've been told that the quote is too low. It is a tricky high wire act sometimes to accomplish the two, to accomplish those 2 roles successfully. And then there's the third role I was going to just say, which is the re-recording mixer, which is the person who sits there on the desk and then blends all those different hundreds and hundreds of elements together to make it work as one whole, hopefully harmonious sounding soundtrack.
Let's shift gears to the specific. Recently you worked on Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. What did you do?
All 3 of those. So that was me involved for 8 months as the sound designer, coming up with the sound of the hippos, for example, and the charging rhinos in the helicopter sequence. As the supervisor or co-supervisor, there was me and another guy who we shared the duties on, running a team of 6 or 7 editors, and that was over the course of 6 months. And then mixing it, which was quite a big thing on this project. I think we mixed for something like maybe even 8 weeks in total.
What took so long?
VFX kept coming in late, and the schedule got pushed because of various reasons. With a movie like that, you've got a lot of visual effects that continually coming in, and you kind of settle on the sounds at one point for, say, the helicopter, which is moving in one way at one particular point in the sequence, and then the new turnover comes through and it's doing something different. And if you've already done a mix on that, you kind of need to rework all the elements and then remix it. So that's kind of what we were doing. For Jumanji, I was on that for 9 months. So that's quite a long stint.
Put your sound designer hat on, and let's talk about the jungle sounds in Jumanji. Where do you start, and how do you create them? Do you record something naturally or start with something artificially generated? Walk me through your process.
It's a bit of both of those, actually. The great thing about Jumanji is it's a computer game. You don't really have to be beholden to any reality. Jumanji is a place that doesn't exist, and therefore we can have fun with the sounds. So we wanted the sounds of Jumanji to change as the guys were walking through the jungle. I have a vast library of sound effects from various commercial sound effects libraries from previous movies that I've worked on. But then you also go out and you record some stuff, because I wasn't beholden to, well, this is a jungle that is based in, say, Borneo, in a rainforest in Brazil. You can do what you want. You can, as long as it sounds right, and as long as everyone agrees that it sounds right, you can kind of do anything you want. So along with regular jungle noises, I took things like wolves crying and howling and slowing them down, and making weird kind of noises that hopefully prick up your ears a little bit and make you a bit on edge when there's tension about to happen. There's no hard and fast rules to it, and as long as it's something that hopefully excites the audience and helps tell a story, then go for it and have fun and do something that's hopefully unique.
How do you and the director communicate when you're trying to describe something that doesn't yet exist?
That's a good question. The thing that I find about my job, for want of a better phrase, the challenge about it and also the fun thing about it is no two directors hear sounds the same. I literally came off a plane on a Friday night from Baby Driver, where I spent 7 months in the UK working with Edgar Wright, who thinks about sound in one way, in a very particular way. And then I had the weekend off, and then I came into work on a Monday and started Jumanji with Jake, who thinks about sound in a completely different way. And I'd never worked with Jake before. And so my role is to try and tap into how that director feels about sound and what it is they're after, and try and get into their brain as quickly as possible to start servicing their needs. And it's not necessarily a case of going through the movie and literally watching it through and them saying, this is what I want here, this is what I want there. That doesn't really happen so much, like what's called spotting sessions, where you literally sit through the whole movie. You just kind of have a conversation and you talk kind of emotion and kind of just some tableaus of sound. And then I'll go away and start creating stuff. And then the director will come in, play a first sequence, and hopefully they'll say, oh, that's great. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for, or that's not quite right. And this is the thing that isn't quite gelling for me. It's a to and fro process the whole time. There's no point talking about sounds. We may as well start playing with sounds and seeing how those sounds work within the environment against the music or against the dialogue, and do a trial of it and then adjust to taste and progress on that. You're constantly kind of throwing up ideas, and hopefully the majority of them work. Sometimes they don't. More often they do. And it's about being flexible and not having a specific... I used to say, from day one, I know exactly how this is going to sound, but I don't believe that anymore at all. I really do think it's experimentation, and how you feel something should feel on day one of the process is not necessarily how you feel it should sound on day 30 or month 2 or month 4. It changes as the movie changes.
What characteristics or skill sets does someone need, from your perspective, to be successful in sound design and sound mixing?
Let me tell you my attitude. I deeply believe you've got to be a team player. If you're someone like me who's kind of a team leader, I lead the sound crew, is you've got to lead by example. There are people who do what I do who don't even do the work. They just kind of come into a room and tell other people what to do, and I don't believe in that. I do the work, and I try and teach the work that I do to try and pass on the knowledge to people around me if they're fresher in the industry. I believe a good strength that you should have is to try and think outside the box. I think just to reflect what is on screen, that's the easy thing. I think anyone can do that and mirror the images with a sound. It's trying to come from it from a different angle and trying to think what can be done to make it sound unique, what can be done to enhance tension or dramatic moments and emotional moments. And that's not necessarily reflecting what's on screen at all. And also, as a sound designer and as a mixer, sometimes those two roles are almost the same thing. Taking away sounds can be just as important as adding sounds. And as a sound designer, it's very easy to be wedded. If you've spent 3 weeks working on a very cool sound, it's very easy to get offended or get upset if a director comes in, or even it makes it through to the mix and the director says, nah, I don't like this. Let's try something else. You don't try not to be wedded. I mean, if you feel it's right and you feel that it warrants it, you gotta go back for your sounds, and you gotta back and state your reason why. But you should never really be too wedded, because when you get a mix on a movie has got hundreds and hundreds of elements, and just changing a piece of music for another piece of music can completely change the tone of a scene, and therefore all the other sounds that are working with it. So that, I guess I would say, good people's person, try and think outside the box.
Give me an example of what outside the box means to you.
Trying to make a sound that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be. As an example, Steve, who was one of the picture editors on Jumanji, he's on his next job. This was a few weeks ago, and he emailed me in a panic. He said, "I'm looking for the sound. I'm trying to make a sound of I can't remember what it was, but it was I'm trying to make a sound on this thing of blood explosion." And he said, I have nothing in my library for it." And I said, "Well, try finding mud splat, try finding an explosion, try find a cannon boom, and then just find something completely random, literally completely random, to put over the top of it." And he said, "Why so?" And I said, "Well, in Jumanji, they're on these motorbikes, and they've got these kind of big cannons, and whenever they fire the cannon, there's a screaming sound, which is actually a gibbon screaming, and which is something you would not necessarily put on the sound of a cannon blast, but it gives it its own unique tone, unique kind of sound to it." And so I always like to think that if you close your eyes as you get towards the end of the movie and you hear that sound again, you know what it is, because it's been lodged in your brain. And Steve was like, "Oh wow, that's great. That's amazing." And I said, "Well, that's what I did for the cannons in Jumanji. I just pick something random. There's not necessarily a methodology to it. It's the phrase of throwing paint at the wall and seeing what sticks." So that's the kind of thing. It's trying to think, not just thinking, okay, what does a cannon sound like? It's trying to explore your peripheral vision a bit.
You've been doing this for a long time. What is it that still gets you excited about getting up in the morning?
I literally feel like I've just started my career. I mean, the whole thing with Baby Driver and the 2 Oscar noms, and I'm still very young for, a lot of my fellow nominees this year were 20 years in advance of me. I really feel like I've yet set out what I started to do. I came to LA to do a movie that never happened, and I had a year's worth of work disappear, and realized when this year's worth of work disappeared that all my directors, all my picture editors and producers I'd left in the UK, and I didn't know anyone, and I had to start from scratch. And I'm very proud that after just 4.5 years, I've kind of got to this point where I've 2 double Oscar nomination and the BAFTA noms, but I still feel there's further to go. So that's kind of what drives me in the morning.
Julian, for people that want to hire you for their next gig, where can they find you on the web?
You could go to IMDb or IMDb Pro and just search my name, Julian Slater, and my contact details are in there.
That's all one word, Julian Slater. And the Julian Slater himself is the voice you're listening to. Julian, this has been fun. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Christian Cooke and Brad Zoern are re-recording sound mixers at Deluxe in Toronto. Both were nominated for an Oscar this year for their work audio mixing The Shape of Water. Hello, Christian, and welcome, Brad.
Hi. Thank you very much.
Christian, I want to start first. You guys work often as a team. When did you first start working together?
Probably about 10 years ago.
What brought you together?
We were on a TV series called Lost Girl for Jay Firestone.
And were you mixing at that time, or were you doing other audio work?
Mixing. We were both mixers.
Brad, what got you interested in sound mixing back many years ago?
My first full-time job was at a post-production studio. So I originally wanted to do music, as most of the people that come into this business were musicians beforehand. And I really enjoyed the post aspect of the job and found it a much more secure future in that, and not going deaf at the age of 30 from doing music.
Christian, how did you get the gig mixing The Shape of Water?
Doug asked me, the post supervisor, if I was available.
It shouldn't be that easy to get a project that good.
I said, I think I'm available. Let me check my schedule.
Well, also, you had done Strain with Guillermo.
Yes, I did the Strain. The pilot. I did the pilot for the Strain with Guillermo.
Christian, tell me about the process you followed in mixing the file. Did both you guys do the exact same work, or did you separate the job? I mean, go into some detail on this.
Well, I did the dialogue and the music, and Brad handled all the good stuff. Well, let's not. The music was amazing. The dialogue was pretty good too. It was all great.
There wasn't a whole lot of dialogue. Your lead character didn't speak. This is striking me as opting for not a lot of work.
Well, you'd be surprised. There was a lot of extra breaths. They did. Nelson, the dialogue editor, Nelson Ferrer, did a full breath pass with Sally for the whole movie, the entire film. Every time she sort of moved her breath. So there was a lot of breaths to add into the already existing production track.
Why was the breathing so important?
Guillermo wanted to bring her a little more, not more to life, but more, I'm not sure how to describe, but he just wanted her presence on the screen.
Brad, if Christian is doing the dialogue and the music, what's left to you?
All the background, ambience, mix those, as well as the sound effects and all of the creature sounds and all that, as well as Foley.
How much of that was artificially created and how much of it was just a recording of the natural world?
The only thing naturally recorded on the set in that would have been probably 70% of the lead dialogue, and that's about it. Everything else has been edited by our amazing sound editing team and the supervising sound designer Nathan Robitaille, who did all the creature voice and everything like that, as well as our Foley guys who basically brought the creature to life by doing skin movements, feet, all that sort of thing to put it on the screen and give it some life. Because basically everything I had was recreated in a sound edit beforehand. Not a lot from the original location recordings, other than some dialogue, was what was original in that movie.
How big a team were you working with from an audio point of view?
Our editorial team on the effects was headed up by Nathan Robitaille, who's the sound designer, and probably about 4 sound effects editors, a couple guys that did the background ambient editing, and then our Foley team, which is our Foley artist, Foley editor, and our Foley mixer. So between all those guys, they made up for the editorial team on the sound design, sound effects, and Foley side of things. And the dialogue side would have been 3 or 4, Nelson Ferrer and Jill Erdy.
Christian, I know you took the lead on the project. What happened when you and Brad would disagree on how something's supposed to be mixed?
Guillermo would let us know. We hardly ever disagree. We have a very similar mindset as to how to approach a film or TV show. So
that's why we've lasted 10 years together.
We're like an old married couple.
Chris is what my wife calls my work wife.
Work wife.
Brad, what were your biggest challenges putting the soundtrack together?
It would have been the creature. We created the sound of him from the bottom up. There was absolutely nothing there beforehand, so just making that sound real and putting it in the space and having it work with the production dialogue that was recorded on location, it was the probably the biggest challenge for me, and just so it sounded natural. If it didn't sound natural, it's going to take you out of the moment of the film and the magic of the film. That was my biggest challenge, was just making it sound like I didn't do any work.
Christian, now that you're looking at the film, what are you proudest of?
I'm proudest of this movie. What an incredible experience to be involved with all the people that we had the pleasure of working with. And I don't know, it's just opened your eyes, I guess, as to what's possible.
Christian, for people who want to keep track of the work that you're doing, where do you work and where can we go on the web to learn more?
I work at Deluxe in Toronto. And if you want to check out my IMDb page, you're more than welcome to do that. That's Christian T. Cooke. And
Brad, same question. I know you're freelance. How can people keep track of you?
Through IMDb is the best option. I am under Brad Zoern, Zoern, on IMDb. You can see all my current projects and stuff like that.
And Christian Cooke and Brad Zoern are re-recording sound mixers, working out of Deluxe in Toronto. And gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Jeff Berryman is a senior scientist for Bosch Communications and chair of several AES standards committees. He also has strong opinions about what we need to know about networking. Hello, Jeff. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Thank you very much.
Jeff, how would you describe what you do when you are not working with AES?
Well, my job title is senior scientist, and what that really means is they didn't know what to call me. But I work a lot on future technology planning, early stage product architectures, and some technology evaluations that we do, for incoming technologies, and also I do a little programming just to keep my hand in.
Enough to keep you out of trouble. All right, then how would you describe what you do as part of AES?
Well, as part of AES, I chair a couple of committees that are working on developing standards for media networking, for the networking that we need in professional audio and broadcast. The two committees in particular I work with, one of them is the committee that is responsible for an AES standard called AES 70, which is a way of remote controlling devices over a network. And the other committee is working a little bit more futuristically on trying to figure out what is going to be needed in the future for what are called network directories. And network directories like the phone book for a network that lets you find things. And, when we get up to networks with thousands of devices, it's a non-trivial problem. So we'll eventually be having standards in that area, too. That area is a little developmental.
Well, you're working about 3 to 5 years ahead of the rest of us, but is part of the area that you're working with this new idea of audio over IP?
Well, yes, very much so. The audio over IP area is certainly full upon us. The AES has a very well-known standard in that area called AES 67, which is a standard that defines how you send sound over an IP network. And the work I do has something to do with that, but it also is a companion piece to AES 67, which is a standard that says how you control devices that receive that sound. The quick one-liner we have is, you can send sound over a network, but what are you going to do with it when it gets there? And so the latter, that's the question that I spend most of my time on, and other AES colleagues are spending time on how to send sound in the first place.
Well, I remember years and years before you were born working in broadcast television, and we thought the ability to punch a button and have a remote videotape machine start playback was about the best it was going to get. This sounds like the next evolution of that.
Well, yeah, it is the next evolution of that. We really think that in order to have a complete networking solution in your production facility or in other audio applications and video applications, you're going to need to, as I say, you're going to need to be able to not only send the program material around from place to place, but you're also going to have a lot of remote control over the devices. I'm aware of one radio installation that's being developed in Europe right now where they have a cluster of studios in something like a 70-mile diameter circle, and they all share common signal processing capabilities in a server room someplace. So, with applications like that, you need not only good ways to send the sound around, but good ways to control what's happening to it.
Well, you've said that there's a problem with how we use our network equipment. What's the problem with it?
Well, it isn't so much a problem with how we use it; it's a problem with how we talk about it. I mean, and if you look at the dialogues that are going on in the broadcast community right now, that there are a bunch of people that are interested in business and operations management, and they're very concerned with planning studio workflows, optimizing resources, booking equipment, managing inventories, managing repairs and maintenance, and generally speaking, with all of those highly financially leveraged activities that make you maximize use of your capital plan. That's one bunch. The other bunch is talking about more like the remote button on the tape machine, is how once you have a studio there, how do you make everything, all the equipment all play nicely together and make the cues pop when they're supposed to pop. So that's the sort of the device control problem, and those two people are both wanting those two crowds are both wanting network solutions, but often they don't realize that they're talking different things, and so sometimes you get in these conversations with people talking across purposes. You have the high-level business people, studio management people wanting stuff, the low-level device control people wanting stuff. there are some commonalities, but basically the problems need to be addressed separately. That's what I see right now in the industries going on.
Well, how does AES get involved with this?
Well, AES doesn't get involved with the studio management problem, or at least they haven't done so far. That the what I call the high-level problem, the optimizing resources, that is not the province of AES. The other people are working on that. The EBU, the European Broadcast Union, has done a lot of signature work. There's another group called the Joint Task Force on Network Media that's very interested in that. SMPTE, the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, another professional organization, sort of a parallel to the AES, is very interested in that question, as are other trade associations as well. The AES is really more interested in the smaller question of how you control devices and so on. The reason for that is that the AES has a constituency that extends not only the broadcast community but also out of the professional audio community, and the airport paging systems and concert sound systems and installed theater systems and a lot of those applications don't have the resource management challenges that broadcast does. So in fact, it's the broadcast-oriented organization, National Association of Broadcasters and so on, that are really focusing on the high-level problem. AES is focusing on the low-level problem.
But it seems to me, and let's just wear an AES hat for a minute, it seems to me that one of the fallouts of this is I could have a server farm based in a city, and because there's no law sending audio over IP, I don't need local stations anymore. I don't need local engineers. It could all be run remotely out of a single control room. If that's true, are audio engineers concerned about that over the long term?
I haven't heard those concerns, because it seems to me that that as much as networking allows centralization, it also allows decentralization. So while you might have a lot of servers in the center, if I understand your question correctly, I can imagine a lot of servers in the center doing the legwork of mixing and image processing and sound processing and program storage and all that stuff. But those servers could be accessed remotely. So in fact, you're looking at a situation really where you're almost increasing the ability to do things locally. You can create you can do a whole production from a location van if you want to, because you can access these remote facilities very well. So I don't see that the centralization or decentralization, number one, I don't see that centralization is necessarily the only outcome. And number two, I don't see if things do get centralized, it'll necessarily put people out of work. I think it'll give them more freedom.
Interesting. For people that want more information about what AES is doing, where can they go on the web?
The AES's website is at aes.org. And that's the easiest place to go. The companion society, the Society for Motion Picture and Television Engineers that I mentioned, is at smpte.org.
That's aes.org, and Jeff Berryman is running one of the standards committees for AES. And Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Larry, it's been a pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye. Christopher Johnson is the visionary behind the high-performance hardware from MediaWorkstations.net. As founder and president of the company, he is responsible for company sales, marketing, and research and development, as well as their strategic direction. Hello, Christopher. Welcome.
Hi, Larry.
How would you describe MediaWorkstations.net?
Well, we're a team of creative artists and technologists and computer hardware experts, we like to think, that are focused on supporting the community of media production, content creation. We're based in Los Angeles. We were founded in 2010, basically to serve studio teams, visual effects artists, designers, media professionals, anyone who is doing content creation work worldwide.
Well, there's no shortage of computers out there. Why did you decide to start the company?
My wife introduced me to a video game, which I got addicted to. These people are constantly talking about computer hardware, specifically graphics cards most often. And after building about 7 of these machines, my wife asked me, so what are you going to do with these 7 computers you've built? I promptly sold them on Craigslist, and one of the people that showed up was a media professional. We're here in LA. He wanted all these kinds of upgrades, and I started to think about, well, this could be a business. I can't think of a better place to be than Los Angeles, and in short order, we got a couple celebrity clients, and we were off and running. If it comes to, the real value of what we're providing the media professional, if you call up Apple or Dell or HP and you say your core applications are Premiere Pro, After Effects, Cinema 4D, and Octane Render, and what's the best hardware for me, you're going to get crickets. But we know what's best for that workflow. And we can walk through customers to show component by component what is going to best support the work that they're doing. That's what we provide.
What are your products? You've talked about the products, but what are your products?
We're actually providing custom-built workstations, portables, and servers and storage. So those are the four kind of buckets. Workstations are, a variety. We have dual Xeon workstations. We have Core, Intel Core products, and we have AMD Threadripper workstations. Then on the server side, we have CPU oriented servers and GPU optimized servers. We have storage products, and we have portables, which are not laptops. These are workstations which are more like basically a workstation where the keyboard and the monitors fold up onto the keyboard. And they're basically portable studios. They can have up to 3 graphics cards and up to, 30 terabytes of storage. It's a full-on workstation. For DITs, directors of photography, et cetera, it's ideal.
Well, a big limitation, as one of your reviewers wrote, is that your hardware is Windows only. How do you reassure Mac users that it's safe to migrate to Windows?
Well, that's a really good question, Larry. And we do build Linux workstations as well. And a lot of the larger enterprise clients often have us just build and stability test the hardware, no OS installed. So there's a variety of, different operating systems needs. But for Mac people, I think the thing to say is it's very stressful for them thinking about that they can have hardware that's 2, 3, 5, 10 times powerful than what they're working with. So it's, constantly on their mind. One of the options that we've found that's helpful to them in making that move is if they've got render needs, and this is a really common one. They're working in Adobe CC and Cinema 4D, and their Macs cannot handle Cinema 4D renders. Well, you can purchase, like a dual Xeon media workstation or a GPU optimized workstation just to handle those render jobs. And you can connect that workstation via SMB to all the Macs. There's no issue. So that's one way you can start to integrate, without making the leap cold turkey. I'm dropping Macs and I'm going over to PC. That's one way, we can help the Mac community with the work that they have to do.
A lot of times, creative people have no clue what the hardware actually is. They just simply turn it on and start to use it. How do you help us create a customized system that meets our needs?
The place we start with is, what are your core applications? Typically, the 3 most used applications are what drive the hardware. Because what we're ultimately providing is insight into how the software talks to the hardware. Is it efficient? And in what ways is it efficient? How is it using the hardware? So going through that with people, it then becomes apparent to them what is going to be best, and we explain why. For example, in Premiere Pro and After Effects and Photoshop, you're never going to use more than 6 to 8 cores on any CPU. So a dual Xeon configuration doesn't make sense for someone who's doing that kind of work. If you're Cinema 4D, if you're doing motion graphics or modeling, it's important to ask the customer, what are you doing with Cinema? Are you just doing modeling and motion graphics? Or do you use physical render? Or do you use a render engine like Octane or Redshift to support your rendering needs? All of those things help determine what's going to be best. Not only what applications they're using, but how they're using the application. That makes sense.
How would you describe the typical customer?
Well, most of our customers are CG, visual effects artists, edit and color. It's mostly Adobe CC, Avid, Cinema 4D, Autodesk products like 3ds Max and Maya, V-Ray, Arnold, Octane and Redshift, and DaVinci Resolve for color.
What would you most like our listeners to know about your products?
We're not selling you what we sell. We're selling you on what's best for you. One of the things I think your listeners will probably notice if they go to HP or Dell or even Apple, your options are limited. And a lot of times those options are not best for a content creation workflow. We also understand what's required of creative excellence. And the big monster in the background is time. If you've got poorly sourced or underpowered hardware, it has a huge impact. Project scope, your team capabilities, and ultimately the thing you least want it to impact, the creative process itself. And we're here to liberate and empower people's creative capabilities.
For people that need more information, where can they go on the web to learn about you and your company?
MediaWorkstations.net.
That's all one word, MediaWorkstations.net. And Christopher Johnson is the founder and CEO. And Christopher, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Larry.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, DoddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. DoddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go, DoddleNEWS.com. Robert Kiraz has a background as a serial entrepreneur with a specialization in film and entertainment technology. Currently, Robert is the co-founder and CEO of StudioBinder, a project management solution for production companies, and Production Beast, a job board and social network for video professionals. Hello, Robert. Welcome.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for having me.
How would you describe StudioBinder, the company?
Well, StudioBinder solves kind of a big problem in the entertainment industry. I often joke that throughout the entire history of cinema, there's probably never been an efficient production. Most productions get done, but they're very rarely efficient. Mm-hmm. And we know there's a lot of great post-production software out there, but there really isn't a great pre-production and production management solution in the cloud. So that's what we're looking to solve. So StudioBinder is a project management solution made specifically for video creatives. So they can use it to manage their talent and their crew details. They can create production calendars and share it with their colleagues. They can create tasks and shot lists and storyboards and shooting schedules and script breakdowns, and even generate call sheets that are personalized to the recipient and send them out and track them all via the cloud. So, and on top of that, document storage in the cloud as well. So for us, the way we look at it is it doesn't matter if you're a videographer or an agency or a production company or even a brand. If you're creating video on a recurring basis, being efficient is really important. Saving hours in planning time really adds up, and that means that you're saving on labor too. So that's what we're looking to solve, is to try to make production management a lot more efficient.
Well, production management is not something a 6-year-old looks up at the stars and says, when I grow up, I'm going to invent production management software. What was it that first caught your attention with this?
Well, my background is in filmmaking. I studied filmmaking. I went to film school. I went to SC. So my background is very much rooted in as a writer director. But in 2008, I did a life pivot into technology and created my first company, which was a live video streaming company. And from there, I sold the company, and from there, I wanted to get back into the entertainment field in some way. And I knew that this was a big problem. And actually, right around 2012, I had shot a passion project of mine that I funded it, and it was a pretty big shoot. And I was shocked at how completely inefficient the entire experience was. And that might have been because I was coming at it from a tech perspective, for being in tech at that point for at least 5-6 years. I was just shocked. I'm like, well, what? You're telling me call sheets are spreadsheets, and you send them out hours before the shoot, and you have no way of knowing if someone even sees the call sheet. Most of my cast and crew I had not seen for weeks the day before the shoot. So it was just, the entire experience was just shocking to me. And I talked to my producer and said, "Is this normal?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is how it's done. This is how it's done." That's what we have text messaging. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So anyway, StudioBinder came out of a personal pain point for me that I experienced.
Well, by the way, I went to your website and I watched the tour demo, and I thought it was brilliant. It's just a really good demo of what StudioBinder can do, and we'll have the website for people that want to watch it. But do visit the website and do check out the tour, because it's excellently produced. When you were working with StudioBinder, this is one of those applications that can always have new features added, because there's so many different ways that we can describe what a production is. How do you balance adding key customer features with feature creep that make the program more complex and harder to use?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, someone recently asked me, so StudioBinder does a lot of things, but what's the one thing that StudioBinder does? What is the defining feature? And my response is, the one thing that StudioBinder does is everything. Because the problem with production is that if you build a niche solution that does one thing, let's say just shot listing, right? And that data needs to go onto the call sheet, or if you have a screenplay, well, that needs to go and become potentially a breakdown or a shooting schedule. So at some point there's a handoff of software, and this is the inefficiency in the industry. It's because there isn't a solution that can take it A to Z. You're oftentimes exporting data. There's this whole CSV export, import, and data refactoring experience that is the production experience. And people just giving up and saying, you know what, I'll just make a spreadsheet for it. And most scheduling software is not just antiquated. You think it's still the 90s. So there really isn't a modern solution that can take you kind of through that entire production experience. It's a huge feat to pull it off, and it's something that we're working on every day. But that ultimately is what is necessary. And then finding a way, of course, through the software to just enable or disable the features that make sense for your scale of production, which can change shoot to shoot. So making it very easy to use and very modular, that's an important part of it. But going too niche with production management solution that's actually the cause of the problem. You actually have to do it all. Unfortunately for me, got to build it all. But we're getting there.
Who do you think is the typical customer? Is it a large studio, a single videographer? I mean, I know you want to say everybody, but who's your target?
Yeah, something very interesting. Originally we started off as pure entertainment, thinking production companies, feature films, short films, indie writer-directors. But something interesting happened where there's this sort of split in our customer base. And it's growing all the time. There was this new contingent, which is short-form branded content. So on one side, we have, of course, traditional entertainment with feature films and shorts. On the other hand, or the other camp, you have creative agencies creating short-form entertainment. You have brands where every brand now is essentially, every company is effectively a publisher now. Everyone has a YouTube or Vimeo page. And to be relevant in social media, you've got to create content, right? Especially video content, which is very shareable. So brands are creating their own content. They have their in-house video departments now more than ever before, and they're looking for efficiency tools. So what we're seeing is it really is a 50-50 split right now between entertainment and branded content, short-form entertainment. And our customers really, we have Facebook and BuzzFeed on one hand. On the other hand, we have CBS, so it's an eclectic mix, which, again, goes back to we got to kind of build it all and allow people to be approach it in a more modular fashion to make it personal to their needs.
How do you price your service? What's it cost?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's a turnkey system. You can go to our pricing page, StudioBinder.com/pricing. We have plans that are as affordable as $19 a month, up through $85, and that's per user. And there are additional incentives and discounts for larger organizations. When they have any questions, they can email us, hello@StudioBinder.com, and we'll get them all set up.
Well, I understand you've got a discount for our listeners.
We do. It's a 20% discount for the first month. I believe it's Larry Jordan 20 is discount code. And if you upgrade, you can put that in and get the discount.
That sounds like a good code to me. The website, what website, Robert, do people need to go to learn more?
Sure. It's StudioBinder.com.
That's all one word, StudioBinder, StudioBinder.com. And Robert Kiraz is the co-founder and CEO of StudioBinder. And Robert, thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. This has been an interesting conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye. You know, I was just thinking, NAB, for those of you who are keeping track, is still more than 3 weeks away. However, now is the time that companies start to send press releases bragging about their upcoming announcements at the show. They do this to make an impact before the noise of all the other announcements drowns them out. The rush really started on Monday and will continue to build force until we get to the show. Soon I'll be drowning in literally hundreds of press releases. However, one this morning caught my eye that I want to share with you. First, though, a bit of background. Press releases are written for an audience of informed writers or editors to use in reporting about a new product or service. These releases need to describe the news, explain why it's significant, and do so in words that make sense to their audience, and sometimes a little marketing gets in there as well. A lot of time and energy goes into planning, writing, and reviewing a press release. But sometimes, especially in technology, the writer of the press release forgets these simple facts and gets carried away in a fit of geek hyperspeak that, well, here's an example from a press release I received this morning from a company called Anivia. This is their first paragraph. Quote, Anivia, a leading provider in OTT and IPTV software solutions, has launched the latest version of its NEA CDN product created to deliver low latency and broadcast quality content even during peak viewing times. The new version enables operators to go virtual with an HVM-based AMI for seamless deployment in AWS, ensuring they can combine all the benefits of NEA CDN with those of the Amazon cloud. For example, greater flexibility, scalability, and cost savings. Close quote. Now, I've been in media for more than 40 years and covering the industry for almost 20, and I have no idea what they are talking about. This trap of getting so wrapped up in technology that we're unable to make sense is one that all of us who write or make films need to be wary of. We know too much, far more than our audience. This means that we always need to be careful that what we say and what we write can be understood by the people we're trying to reach. This is clearly something the folks at Anivia forgot. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank my guests this week, Julian Slater with Sony Pictures, Christian Cooke and Brad Zoern with Deluxe in Toronto, Jeff Berryman with AES, Christopher Johnson with MediaWorkstations.net, Robert Kiraz with StudioBinder, and James DeRuvo with DoddleNEWS. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday morning. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Text transcripts are provided by Take One Transcription. Visit takeone.tv to learn how they can help you. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.